Hello and welcome. My name is Patty Murray, and I will be your host for today's Food Safety Tech webinar, Automating Food Safety Programs, Real-Life Case Study. Before we begin, let me provide you with some important housekeeping information. If you have any technical difficulties, please try logging off and then logging back in. If this does not work, please contact WebEx support at 1-866-229-3239. Please feel free to send in your questions for our speakers throughout the event using the Q&A feature. SafetyChain will send you a copy of the slides and a link to the webinar archive by Monday, February 24th. Now I'll turn things over to Rick Byros, President and Publisher of Food Safety Tech, who will introduce our agenda and speakers. Rick?
Thank you, Patty, and welcome everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsor, SafetyChain Software. SafetyChain is the leading provider of food safety chain management systems, or FSCMS, a technology innovation designed to help enforce and document food safety and quality assurance at all points along the company's value chain. For what comes in, what do you do with it, and where it goes next. SafetyChain's FSCMS, SafetyChain for Food, helps prevent non-compliant ingredients and raw materials from coming in and non-conforming finished products from going out. Additionally, it helps ensure FSQA workflow, processes, and documentation, all while creating a central repository of FSQA data for trending, assessments, reporting, and audit readiness. SafetyChain for Food saves time, saves money, and creates operational efficiencies that automate, streamline, and improve FSQA. We have an informative agenda for you today, and we'll be covering business drivers for automation, how automation has taken FSQA to the next level, results and lessons learned, food safety chain management technology, and there'll be time for question and answers. Forward the slide, Patty. Great. Okay, terrific. We have two speakers today, and we've got kind of a unique format that we're excited to present today. Our special guest speaker is Crista Lowery Francis, who has added a third name to her name since the last time I introduced her. Crista is Safety and Quality Manager for Florida Caribbean Distillers. She has over 15 years experience in manufacturing and government compliance in agricultural, juice, deli, dairy, and distilled spirits industries. Her previous roles have included as a dairy analyst, where she had FDA, USDD, and SQF, FDDAS certified by state of Florida, Deli Quality Inspector, USDA and FDA, Quality Analyst for Juice HACCP, FDA, and Pathology, Virology, Entomology, Agricultural Research at IFASUF. A lot of acronyms there and a lot of letters. Crista also has an AA Microbiology, BS Interdisciplinary of Natural Sciences, Biology, Chemistry, and Geology, and is a Certified Food Safety Manager and Certified HACCP Manager. Joining Crista will be Barbara Levin of SafetyChain Software, who is our sponsor for today's event. Barbara serves as the Senior Vice President of Marketing for and Consumer Community for SafetyChain, and she is the co-founder of the FSQA Automation Innovator. Barbara has spent the last 30 years helping companies understand how to leverage emerging technologies to execute on strategic business initiatives. Since joining SafetyChain, she has brought this passion to the food and beverage industry and is a frequent author and speaker on technology topics. I'm pleased to turn things over to Barbara now.
No.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you
Okay.
now, Barbara.
Well, I'm sorry. And that was such a good little speech that I just gave there. Unfortunately, I was on mute. We'll get our one mess up for every webinar over with early. Anyhow, as I was saying, apparently to myself, I'm very excited to welcome Crista Lowery to today's event and to interview her. I always enjoy speaking with Crista. I think when it comes to leveraging technology to bring food safety and quality assurance to new levels, she's absolutely one of the most visionary thought leaders that I've had a chance to work with, and I think all of you will really be excited to hear about her project. And we've got a bunch of questions that we're going to go through, and then Crista will take your questions live. And with that, I think I'm just going to start with welcoming you, Crista, and maybe you can tell our participants here today a little bit about Florida Distillers before we jump into questions about your exciting automation projects.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Florida Distillers was established in 1943 as a orange citrus manufacturing plant. The alcohol we produce is made from the orange-based, what would be considered a citrus molasses from like what the orange juice plants use as pulp wash. You know, the waste product for them is actually a good byproduct for us. We take what would be a waste product for them and we ferment it and turn it into usable alcohol because there's still sugar left in that orange mash. The alcohol is then distilled off and collected, and from that we are able to produce either rum from cane neutral spirits or citrus neutral spirits. Our company is known for citrus neutral spirits. And we've moved forward from that with, at one point we had 14 facilities in operation. Currently we have 4 facilities, 2 distilleries, 1 shipping warehouse, and a storage facility as well.
Great. You've got a lot of regulations. Can you run by us, you know, who you're regulated by here?
Sure. We are currently regulated by USDA because we have organic alcohol as well as organic juice products, because we don't only do alcohol, we also do non-alcohol beverages, carbonated beverages, wines, non-alcohol flavorings, and juices. We're regulated by FDA because we do the non-alcohol products. Those fall under FDA regulation. And then anything with alcohol content is actually regulated by TTB.
Sure. And I think this was some of the reason behind your automation project, because you do have a lot of different regulating agencies and schemes. But in addition to that, you know, when you decided to go out and look at technology for food safety and quality assurance, you know, tell us what your challenges were and your drivers.
Well, it turns out there's a lot of technology out there available for utilizing for data recovery or with HACCP, or, you know, so all these programs are independent. There was nothing that was combined. I went out looking for something that we could use as a solution to all of our needs, not just for one operation, not just data entry, not just QA or HACCP. I was looking for something that would answer all of those questions.
And in addition to you know, the regulatory, you were looking to respond to your customers quicker. And tell us a little bit about what you were looking for in terms of that central repository, because I think that's probably key to, you know, to one of the benefits of technology.
Yes, due to our unique operation, we actually sell product in bulk to customers that will use it as an ingredient in further processing. We sell bottled products as well as like rail cars or drums or totes and barrels. So it's important to us to be able to get the information we need to our customer as readily as possible, because we have over 5,000 products that we're currently manufacturing. We do co-pack as well as private label. So we essentially, under our co-pack contracts, we are obligated to provide information for that co-pack as soon as possible. So usually we send out pre-shipped samples and things like that. So we would need to get that information to them as quick as possible. And by putting things into a data repository, it kind of collates the data into one area versus going to multiple areas to get the information. So if customer service needs to respond to the customer with C of A's and allergen statements and things like that are normal requests for business, instead of just going to QA, with it being in the system, they can actually pull up that information from those departments and have that readily available for the customer.
Okay, good. In order to achieve these goals of being a food safety front runner and better response to customers and some of the other things that you spoke about, I know that you really developed kind of 3 strategies to achieve those goals. Can you walk us through some of your thinking behind these 3 strategies? I know we're going to get into each one of these in more detail, but maybe kind of at that bigger picture.
Well, FSSC certification is top-notch, in these GFSI scheme of things. It's not something that everybody does, but it's something that worked for our industry. We have so many variables. Some of the other programs are a little bit more structured. We needed something that was a little more broad to allow us to meet our needs. And for the food safety automation, it allows us to capture data throughout the entire system and not just one area of process. So we can capture ingredient information, raw material information, packaging information, quality analytical, production information, processing, batching, shipping, receiving, all the way down to, 1 step forward, 2 steps back for a recall for, in the event you need to, which is all part of building the food safety culture, changing the mindset within the company. TTB products, these are, alcohol-based products, they're inherently safe. So the idea is that they are safe. But the problem is under these guidelines, under food safety, nothing's safe. You have to move beyond what is the inherent risk and assess if there's any problems that could be in the future, not that there are. So you have to implement these systems to address concerns that might occur. So this technology allows us to move in that direction.
Okay. So let's get into some of these in a little bit more depth. You started to address this. I think some people might be saying, just what you said before, it's alcohol, it's safe. Why would you go through the exercise of GFSI certification, and then why did you pick FSSC? Anything to add to those thoughts there?
Sure. We're not just alcohol. The thought is that we're alcohol and it's inherently safe. We're not just alcohol. Because we sell in bulk, our product actually goes all over the world and is not necessarily sold as alcohol. It's used by other companies as an ingredient. So it may go to an ice cream plant where it is used as a flavor extraction for ice cream, or it may go to a cosmetic company where it might be added to cosmetics that you would put on your face, or like aftershave or toothpaste or sunscreen or things like that. And then it may go to companies where it is used to clean out processing equipment or lines that would eventually have consumable products in them. Some companies are trying to get away from chemical usage. The alcohol, since it is consumable, a lot of companies are looking to use it as an astringent, a cleaning agent. So these ingredients, it becomes utilized across the industry. It's not just the alcohol industry going to a consumer in the bottle. A majority of what we do is, but not everything we do. So that's why FSSC, because we need it to be the safest level it can be, so that it doesn't just impact us, but it impacts the next step in the food chain. And as I mentioned, it's a little bit more flexible. It's non-prescriptive, whereas maybe SQF would have a checks and balances system. You know, it's plus or minus, pass or fail, with a number of score. You have to get a certain score at the end of that. Where FSSC, it's not a number. It's not a number you're trying to obtain. It's a pass or fail. So that's a little bit more challenging, because when you have a number system, you can say, okay, well, I got a 90, I need 100. So you have a goal to work towards. When it's pass or fail, it's a little bit hard to know where you need to make the improvement, because you may have passed by a lot or you may have failed by a lot. It's kind of a gray area. So you have to have a really rigid program in place to ensure that you pass and not fail. And then, of course, the competitive edge. FSSC is, because it's such a high level within the GFSI scheme, it opens a lot of doors to companies that you may not have had access to before. Some of the big companies like Walmart or Publix or Walt Disney, you know, they're going to require that you have an FSSC-based program or GFSI-based program in order to do business with them. So it gives you kind of a competitive edge. That wasn't the incentive to begin with.
Right.
We're actually owned by a subsidiary of Coca-Cola, and we supply our own company. So we supply Coca-Cola with an ingredient. So it also meets our customers' demands. We have customers that require that we have a GFSI scheme in place, and they recommend what GFSI scheme, because our product list is, several thousand ingredients or several thousand products that we can make. We want to open the door to all customers. So if one customer needs SQF and one customer needs FSSC, another one might want BRC. It was better to go with a higher scheme that would make everybody happy versus going to one of the lower schemes and then having to accommodate on a customer-by-customer basis.
Sure. That makes sense. When it comes to, the automation project, and, we're going to move into what you selected and what your experiences were, we've talked about FSSC. When it comes to just your safety and quality programs themselves, what were your biggest challenges that made you say, okay, there's got to be a better way?
There are a lot of moving parts within the system. You're talking a lot of production lines. So, it's a lot of, actual space. For our particular operations, it's nearly 1 million square feet, almost 12 production lines. It's a very large operation. And with that, you have to anticipate that there's going to be challenges. So being able to get a visual picture on the physical operation was an incentive for the SQA project, because by putting a system in place where you can see what's going on throughout the entire operation versus one piece within the operation gives you an idea of where your challenges might be. Plus, it ensures that we are following the programs. And by programs, I mean the programs that we already have in place. We have SOPs in place, standard operating procedures. Most companies have those. How do you know that operators are following those? We have data set up to where operators are supposed to be filling out checklists or batch sheets and things like that. So if those are things that need to be done per batch or per shift or something of that nature, with this technology, we can actually schedule that by batch, to check it by batch, to check it by day, so you can ensure that the operations or people within the operations are actually following the written programs. The manual data isn't actionable, and what I mean by that is the manual data is collected on paper, it goes into files, it may go into a computer, it then goes into a file cabinet. If one person is interpreting that data, there's no guarantee that the corrective actions will be put in place if there's an issue. where with the technology, we can actually set it up to where it gives us an alert right away. So when the lab checks a sample and it's out of spec, it'll immediately send an alert that that product is out of spec. It'll then tell you that you need a corrective action right away. So you would have to go in and correct that. And that's the case throughout the entire operation, not just quality, but from start to finish, the receiving to shipping. And fast, accurate response. That data, for the most part, that data is collated in one program. So when the auditor comes in and they want to spend 5 days with you, 4 days of that is usually paperwork. The other day is going to be walking in and out and doing tours and looking at things, observing how you do things. But 90% of your audit is looking at paper and looking at the data collected on that paper. With a system in place, we can actually go through sample by sample from every different department and tie it all together. So it leads to fast response time during an audit, whether it's a customer or external audit.
Sure. So we talked about the big picture challenges, and, you know, it's like nice to always sit and talk about the big picture. But when you decided to go out and get automation, can you walk us through, you know, kind of just, I know that you told me that you had 580-something, I think, emails to get through this week. What are some of the things that you were just facing on a daily basis that made you say, okay, we've got to go out and look at some technology here?
Well, on the daily basis, I actually started with this company under food safety. Just recently, as recent as last week, became food safety and quality. The challenges that I faced coming into the company was that data wasn't readily available. It was a silo effect, if you will. I'd walk into an office and ask for records for this. There were file cabinets, and that's pretty common in manufacturing. I've seen it everywhere I've been. But it's inundating when you're trying to track down information. So, you know, I said there's got to be a better way to collate this data, because then you're relying on humans to do the work. Sometimes there's a challenge with that. Somebody calls in, somebody thought somebody else was doing it, you know, blame gets assigned, work doesn't get done. By going to technology, you can eliminate some of that human error. So that, you know, that the volume of what's going on, the ability to track and manage the specifications. I mean, that's a big one, because customers, for the most part, have a standard spec. You know, we're producing product to meet that spec. But sometimes there's changes within that spec, and it's hard to know when those changes take place. We're relying on the customer to notify us that they've changed their specification. By putting a tracking program within the system, we can actually set up reminders that says this customer submitted this information on this date. I'd like them to submit it again at this time next year. And it'll send a reminder to say, hey, we need new specifications for this product to ensure that we're making what you want us to make. Okay, so then going into CCPs, PRPs, SOPs. Did they get done? Did they work? How do you know? You know, CCPs. The auditors want CCP records. When it's on this piece of paper, that piece of paper, because you have all these pieces in the puzzle, it's really hard to go through paperwork. That means you're going through this department, that department, that department, that department, providing everybody filed their paperwork, providing everybody put it where it should be. You can find it, no problem, the old-fashioned way, okay? Under the new technology, you can bring up the CCP records for that particular lot number, that particular batch, however you decide to program your material. Did they work? You put specifications in what your maximum limits are, what your minimum limits are. You can do that with your quality records as well. PRPs, daily sanitation records, are an example. Did the line get sanitized? Did the tank get washed? If you set up documents that require data to be input for those tasks, you can now see if that work is, one, being performed, and two, is it accurate? So that gives us our verification and validation piece within FSSC. and your other, GFSI programs, they want verification and validation. So you can actually start to see that when you're going through the data and then making observations out on the floor. And then, of course, regulatory, third-party customer compliance. Third-party being your GFSI auditor or FDA or USDA. And then, customer compliance as well, because we get audited by our customers. It's the same thing. They want to see data, customers will want to see data related to their product specifically. By putting their paperwork in and tagging it with their name or specific code, you can generate reports for all data associated with their product. If that customer then wants to see a report every month, you can program it to generate a report for that customer for that particular test or all for that product that they're concerned about. So it gives us ability to search through these silos of data. It cuts down on the amount of paperwork. It actually becomes digitized. And it makes it easier to find things because it's easier to go to the website and put in a search code than to go through 6 different departments and 8 different file cabinets and talk to 10 different people. So, and it allows you to, part of that is being able to manage your internal recall program. Under FDA, you have 24 hours to recall, depending upon the severity of the recall. You may have more time, you may have less time. When I came into the company, they were doing recalls, but they were mock recalls, but they were doing them on a 6-month or 12-month basis because you're required by FDA to perform at least one a year. When I came in, I actually set it up on a quarterly basis, and I changed the time from 24 hours to 4 hours. Okay, so can we do that? That was my challenge, to see if all this paperwork silo, if that system works. We could do it, but it really took the full 4 hours to go through the paperwork to find what needed to be done, and it's still good. We still were able to do 100% recovery. However, by digitizing all of those documents and data and being able to search by lot number, you can actually cut your recall time, your mock recall time, down to minutes. Currently, not all of our departments are implemented within the software. We're probably 80% complete. But for the departments that are, they can retrieve that data right away. And with the anticipation of these other departments being on board, it's going to bring that time down even further. Currently, we're at 45 minutes.
Wow,
between all of our operations, yeah.
Wow.
So that way, we're always putting out safe product and maintaining operational efficiencies that allows us to not spend as much time filing paperwork, not as much time going through paperwork, and getting every employee on board with this as part of the culture of food safety, instilling that this change is good for the company. It's good for the culture of food safety. The challenges I faced coming in with that is that it was an alcohol plant, alcohol sterile. What do we need food safety for? It's not what do we need it for. It's required, and it's not a matter of if you had a recall. It's a matter of when, because in this industry, recall is very, very limited because it's a sterile product to begin with. Ideally, nothing grows in it. So really, the recall would be based on foreign materials. So I didn't like that approach. It was, let's change the culture and pretend it's dairy. Let's pretend it's juice. Let's pretend it's as important as the things you consume on a daily basis, and treat it that way.
Very proactive approach. Very exciting. So before we jump into, the specific areas, Crista, and kind of some of the results that you've achieved, and you've already told us some from 4 hours to 45 minutes is very exciting. When you went out to find this technology solution, we know that you selected SafetyChain. We'll talk about that in a moment. What was your process? If there's somebody in the audience today that says, okay, this sounds great, I'm gonna go out and get technology, what were some of the steps that you took that brought you to the vendors that you looked at?
For myself, I actually attended some of, like the GFSI conference and saw, some of the technology and the breakout sessions to see what was available out there. And I found that there are technologies available, but as I mentioned before, those technologies are not encumbersome. They are for food safety. They are for HACCP. They are for quality. They are for something, but not everything all at once. So you would have to, it appeared as though you would have to have multiple technologies in order to capture all of the data that you wanted to capture. So I started doing some online research about technologies to see what was out there and available, and I came across a few. But like the people that are listening, I wasn't sure what technology was right for me. So I started talking to peers, people within the same food safety and quality, and saying, hey, are you having trouble with all this data? How do you capture that at your company? Are you going digital, or are you doing paperwork? What I'm finding out is most people are still in the silo effect. They're still using paperwork. A lot of people haven't gone digital, either because they don't know that the technology is available or because it hasn't been supported by upper management. So you have to find what is right for you and, do the research behind it. So for me, the best resources that I have available to me are the consultants and the auditors that I work with, because they get to see a lot of industries. I get to see my facility and bank on my, past experience. But I get to talk to auditors that are currently going into multiple manufacturing plants all over the world, and the consultants that have been all over the world for, 10, 20, 30, 40 years in the industry and have spent time in all these industries, and ask them what they're seeing. So what are you seeing out there? What do you recommend based on what you're finding? What are some of your suggestions? And SafetyChain was actually recommended to me by a auditor and consultant. And then I started asking beyond that. Once I found out about you guys, I started asking other people if they knew about you or if they knew of companies like you guys. And then, of course, did the research behind your company and others and found that you were a better fit for our particular industry, kind of the way FSSC is a better fit for us. We needed something that was cumbersome or that we could build. I didn't want something that was black and white. I didn't want to have to try to build our company within a system that already existed. I wanted the flexibility to be able to create a system around us. And fortunately for us, SafetyChain had that flexibility.
Great, thank you. So we'll just, we want to get into your results. But you mentioned flexibility, and you mentioned that you thought you'd have to get a lot of different systems. It was all in one platform. Any other things that you want to highlight on as to why you selected SafetyChain, and then we'll move on to your results.
SafetyChain does a lot of the work for you. It turns with a lot of these companies. They have kind of a turnkey technology where they give you the software and you can upload it, and then you can build it yourself, and you're responsible for uploading it, maintaining it, or your IT department. That is really cumbersome for a company or a small company or a big company. You'd have to have somebody that can spend that kind of time doing that. SafetyChain has an entire team of people that actually build that for you. All you have to devote is the time to work with them to help them build it for you. You tell them what you need. They have they have people available to you to help you brainstorm about the best fit for your industry. And the technology. SafetyChain has handheld technology that travels with you. It doesn't have to be at a computer in an office. You can use a handheld device, such as a tablet or even the cell phone. And you can take that technology with you. And you have the ability to review that data 24 hours a day, real time, from anywhere in the world.
Great, thank you. So let's look at some of the areas that you automated. How has automation helped you achieve the goals that you were looking for in the area of managing your thousands of suppliers?
Okay. Well, we send out supplier questionnaires like most companies do. When we send those supplier questionnaires out, it usually comes with a request for multiple documents to fulfill the request within the questionnaire. So we may be requesting things like a GMO statement, an allergen statement, C of A, SDS if it's available, or if it pertains to that particular product, and about 15 other things that we request. So as that information comes back from our supplier, it goes into a file. and it would sit on a file cabinet, and it was a matter of somebody picking it up and looking at it to see what they needed from that. With this system, we can request all of that information. It comes in, it's digitized. So I can now search for information pertaining to supplier by putting in a supplier name. I can search if I have a SDS sheet, but I don't know where it came from. I can find that out backwards because the customer or the supplier had given us the SDS. I can now search that. So it's made, you know, collecting all of that data more streamlined because it comes in, it's filed, it's organized, and I can see it. We don't have to worry about somebody necessarily reviewing it. As it comes in, if there's an issue, it'll red flag. If a document wasn't sent to us that was requested, it'll say we're missing this document from the supplier, and then it'll set up a reminder for me to request that document again to maintain our supplier approval program within FSSC. And so it also sends out notifications. So if I request this information from them every 12 months, maybe they didn't start with us in January. So, you know, it's really hard when you have thousands of suppliers to keep track of when their documents are due. So you can actually set up a reminder to send out notices to that supplier. So when they send information in, it's set up as an anniversary date. We assign it, you know, a 12-month reminder. So at 12 months, it automatically will send us a reminder telling us that that supplier needs to provide us paperwork. So we can then regenerate that questionnaire for them and capture that. So it electronically catches data inbound, such as the C of A's. That's part of the supplier approval program for some of our ingredients. We require C of A's, but it also will give us C of A's for bulk ingredients that we may be using as a further ingredient in products, such as molasses or sugar. You know, if you're using if you're using liquid sugars or even powdered sugars, if we're requesting a C of A from the manufacturer or the supplier, we would have that ahead of time. And we get real-time alerts when it's out of spec if we set a specification for it. And then I think I've already talked about the auto search for the audit trail. You know, you can automatically put in things within the search category and find them. And the flexibility makes it easier for suppliers to work with us.
And then back to that central repository, of course. I know that you've had a lot of great results when it comes to all of those challenges you reviewed before on your FSQA program management. Perhaps you can summarize for us some of the key benefits that you've seen so far, Crista.
Okay, yeah. I think a lot of this, yeah, we've covered, but it allows us to see things real time. The analysis, the alerts. So if there's something that's out of hand or non-compliance, we immediately know that there's a non-compliance rather than finding it out next shift, next day, next week when somebody decides to review the paperwork and sees it as an error. When it's put into the system, immediately if it's out of spec, it's going to send a notice to the QA manager, myself, that there is an issue with that product. So it gives me the opportunity to respond right away versus responding after the fact. So it's proactive rather than reactive. The mobile devices allow us to capture data at the earliest point, including before and after pictures. That's something that I requested, and it turns out you guys offer it. So we can actually take pictures of our finished product on the production line. You know, when the product is complete, we can take an image of that product, and then that goes on our file, so we have it. So if we do get a customer complaint in and they say, well, the color is, or the cap was, or the label was, you know, we can go back to that image and see it. We also keep retains, but I mean, that just gives us a real quick, real time. If I get the phone call in the middle of the night, I can see it without having to go into the plant and find that actual physical sample. And all the data is time-stamped, date-stamped, and ready for audit. That is a really great feature. You can time-stamp, date-stamp, and signature stamp all data recorded. So if it's a technician or operator out on the line, you can see who that operator is because they're assigned, you know, they're assigned by name. It'll date stamp as they're entering it into the device, and then it'll timestamp. So there's no, oh, I was supposed to do it at 10 o'clock, but I forgot, but I really did it at 10:05. You're going to be able to see if it was 10:05 or 11:05. And you can also tell, you know, if you, not that you would have issues with people pencil whipping data, but you have the ability to see if data is accurate. You can see whether the task that is assigned for 45 minutes, you're going to know if it actually took 45 minutes to do that task because of the timestamp. You're going to see when it started and when it ended. And that way, if you know it takes 45 minutes and it took 5 minutes, you have the opportunity right there on the spot to address that situation. Find out why it was only 5 minutes, not 45 minutes, before you end up with product in a tank that wasn't properly washed, or whatever the case may be. And then, of course, outbound CFAs for finished products. We produce CFAs for our products, and we can actually send those out to the customer at request prior to shipment, so pre-ship samples. And it eliminates those data silos that we talked about with actionable data, because it gives us the ability to respond to what we're seeing on the data right away. It also allows for root cause analysis and traceability, which is important under GFSI scheme. You have to give a root cause for anything, and then, of course, traceability. So you can actually start trending data based on data that's in the system. You can set it up to trend the data. You can program it to trend. You say you have customer complaint and it's on the same product, or maybe it's different products, but they share an ingredient. So now you can look at if it's the ingredient or if it's the process. And then you can actually use that as part of your supplier approval program. If it's the ingredient, you can say, now I have multiple products that have your ingredient in it. I have an issue with this ingredient. We can no longer use you as a supplier because, and then you have the data to support that, or whatever the case may be. And then, of course, to support your internal mock recall program, I already mentioned. Every company does it a little bit different. Our goal is 4 hours, and it's quarterly, and it can be done. And then, of course, transparency and visibility. You can see the entire system as a whole. You know, even if you work in one department, you can see the documents affiliated with your department, but you can also see the documents and how they relate down the line. The example within our company is I started with quality. Instead of rolling out this technology throughout the entire company, I started in quality because quality has their hands in every department. So by building the foundation in quality, as I'm branching into these other departments, I can actually use the documents that quality has already set up as a starting point, so that when I go to processing and processing needs to recall quality data on their documents, those two documents can actually talk to each other within the software. So the processing documents will populate with the quality data that was already affiliated with that particular batch number or lot number. So it lends to an overall efficiency.
Great. I think we've covered a lot of this, but anything that you want to mention that you know stood out for you in terms of helping you automate compliance for your GFSI program?
The compliance reporting and dashboards, you can set up your home screen to see the information that's important to you. You know, for me, for quality, I obviously need to see what's going on with everybody, with food safety as well, because I wear both hats. So I actually need to see every document that ever transpires within the entire operation, because all of that goes back to food safety or quality, because they relate to one another. But say you're just in processing and you only need to see your processing records or data, you can have your dashboard set up so that you only see processing. So if you wanted to put a document in place within that system to keep track of your manning hours, or to keep track of your overtime or downtime or supply usage inventory, whatever you decide you need to keep track of, you can build an application within this technology to do that. So it's not limited to just quality data or food safety data or processing. The technology is really capable of recording anything and keeping track of anything that you want it to.
Okay, great. We're going to go through a couple of things here quickly and get to audience questions. You know, whenever you and I speak, Crista, you speak about a culture shift, and I think that's really important. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've done to really create that culture of food safety at Florida Distillers?
Food safety starts at the top. A lot of times people point to quality and say food safety is quality's responsibility, or food safety is the responsibility of that food safety person that works here, or food safety is somebody else's job, it's not mine. Food safety and quality is the heart of your operation, no matter what your operation is. Without those two things in place, you can't really produce a product unless if you want to produce a good, wholesome product for the consumers, it needs to be a good quality product. So you have to start with top down, meaning you start with your upper management. And if your upper management supports that and supports you and your drives, it's going to make this process go a lot smoother than you as a quality person trying to bring this in and say, okay, here's another program we need to put in place. So then with the support of top management, you work your way down to your general, your regular managers, your department managers, your supervisors, and get them to buy into the system and get them on board with the technology and how it's going to make things better, and give them examples of what it's going to do within your environment, and then let them sell it to their employees within the department. This is how we're going to do it. This is why we're doing it. Don't just take the technology out there and then tell them this is what it is, because it's not going to be responded to very well when you change things like that. So all of that is part of the culture change. And within our company, I wanted to ensure our employees that I am committed to food safety and quality. So with that, I've actually signed a contract stating my commitment, and it's signed by my senior management team as well, the vice president of the company and myself. So that letter is from us stating this is, now I have top management support. Now you have, my support as your food safety and quality person. And then I ask the employee to commit to me, to the company. Because it's one thing to say, this is what we're going to do, and this is part of our new culture. But it's another thing when they sign their name on the line. It assigns them accountability, because it's not just some conversation that took place then. Now it's a binding contract between you and that employee. So that actually has a lot more buy-in than just having the conversation alone.
I really like that. I think that's a very strong program. I think we've spoken a lot about the results on the previous slides, Crista.
Yes.
But I'd love to talk about some of the lessons learned. There's folks that I know that I see or attending today that might be thinking, okay, if you have something to do over, if you have some advice to give me as I go down this journey, what are some of the lessons that you think are important to talk about?
You definitely want to get feedback from everyone within the operation, not just your senior managers. Senior managers, they always say that selling to your C-suite is a hard task. It really depends on what you're trying to sell to the C-suite. When you say, I have a program that's going to save us money and save us time, they're going to say, okay, no problem, because they all want to save money and they all want to save time. But sometimes they don't understand the day-to-day operations enough to know what the challenges are on the operating floor. So you really need to go beyond your C-suite and talk to your department managers and your supervisors and get feedback on a program like this. Bring them in, let SafetyChain come in and do their sales pitch with you and see their program, see it in life, see if that's something that's even remotely entertaining to them on the operating line. And then you have to take their opinion with value. If they say there's no way this is going to work because X, Y, Z, then you really have to listen to that, because they're the ones that are dealing with those people day in and day out to know whether that's going to be a concern for them. So, getting everybody involved is highly recommended, because otherwise you might face some challenges down the road that you didn't anticipate in the beginning, because senior management approved it. You need a little bit more than that. You need that approval, but you also need the buy-in from your next level managers. So get their opinion and feedback. And then it's definitely a learning process. You'll find that as you go through the process, you're going to, of course, come into challenges that you didn't anticipate when you started, because seeing things, 2D on, 2D on the screen is a little bit different than having it 3D in hand. So you kind of need to make adjustments and be flexible along the way within that accommodation. I chose to roll this technology out department by department rather than as a company-wide program. I highly encourage that, because when you roll it out company-wide, unless you're a really, really small company, when you roll it out company-wide, it creates too much chaos. And, all of a sudden it's another change, and then people become resistant, and then it becomes, you end up with more challenges than you needed to begin with. By starting slow, and breaking it down department by department, and then meeting with those departments ahead of time so that they know what it is that's coming their way, so that they know how to respond to it, is definitely going to make the implementation process run a lot smoother.
Words to the wise. What we're going to do now is go out of full screen and get ready for questions. So what you can do right now is go to, all of you should see in the lower right-hand side of your screen, you can see the Q&A tab. You can enter your question there, and we'll get to those in a minute. Just a little bit of information while we're waiting for some of those questions. Tell you a little bit about SafetyChain for food. SafetyChain serves all participants in a food supply chain. Our solutions are modular for supplier compliance, FSQA program management, process management, regulatory GFSI, and customer compliance, and as Crista mentioned, the mobile data capture forms. If you've got to leave at the top of the hour, let me give you some, a little bit more information. We look at SafetyChain as a preventive program. Crista mentioned analyzing results in real time and sending out alerts. You can really think of this as your smoke alarm in the cloud. We're going to get to your questions here in just a moment. If you would like more information, you will all get a copy of the slides by close of business on Monday. You can go to info@safetychain.com if you'd like some more information, or you can request that when you get the email that will allow you to download the slides. We've got some great events coming up. You can register at these at safetychain.com. Our FSMA Friday series is coming up next week, and we're going to be discussing food defense with Dr. David Atchison and his team. And one of our other favorite speakers, Debbie Newslow, will be talking about her new book, Food Safety Management Programs, Applications and Best Practices, on March 4th. If you haven't visited the SafetyChain Supply Chain Food Safety and Quality Assurance Resource Center at FoodSafetyTech, we encourage you to do so. There's always new white papers, archives of informative webinars, and lots of news for those folks who are interested in food safety and quality supply chain topics. And with that, let's go to some of the questions that we have. And we see one that's from Johan that's asking, Crista, does the system also support you on the risk assessments of suppliers? How are you using it, or are you using it for that?
You can actually build that into your supplier approval documents that you're putting in place. Say, for instance, it depends on what type of risk assessment you're looking for. Under GFSI, you are required to have an approved supplier program, so you're going to find a way of evaluating your suppliers. We use a questionnaire internally based on whether we're receiving the product on time, if we've had complaints affiliated with that ingredient, and things of that nature. So whatever it is that you'd like to capture from that particular supplier, you can actually build that into your documentation, and you can trend from there. So if you say that if I get 5 complaints on ingredients from this supplier, then I need to consider them a higher risk. You can use it to say if the supplier does not have a GFSI program, I want to consider them a high risk. Whatever you're currently using for risk assessment, you can build that into that system. So yes, it does allow you to do risk assessment for your suppliers.
Great, thank you. Crista, Wendy is asking if the implementation has resulted in reduced audit time for FSSC. She's referring to the audits by third parties, of which the auditee needs to pay for the time on site.
Unfortunately, no, it's not going to change, and that's not a data-related issue. That is a GFSI requirement under those registrars. The registrars have a time required on site based on number of HACCP plans and number of employees. So the documentation aspect doesn't influence those two factors. Those are the only two factors that your registrar is looking at as far as the cost involved and time involved with your audit. However, the actual audit itself does run a lot smoother with a program like this in place, because if you've sat through that audit, you know that there's a ton of information they're looking for, and you can essentially do that from your desk rather than chasing all over the plant to find it.
Carrie is asking if this runs on any tablet or computer, and the answer to that is yes. Excuse me. Let's see here. I'm scrolling down. Johan is wanting to know if you've used the system to set up a HACCP plan or only for monitoring CCPs. I can tell you that the system can be used and is used for setting up HACCP plans, but have you used it that way?
I have not used it for a HACCP team. I do, however, use data on it during HACCP team meetings for verification and validation. So if we're reviewing documentation in place for validation, it definitely comes in hand for that.
Great. Ned's wanting to know if you've used the system or planning to use the system for your first-party audits in terms of things like scoring and trending.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, what I have in place is the food safety audit. We do a monthly internal plant, and it's essentially a sanitation audit, but it's for food safety. And I can, instead of writing a 5,000-word report for the month, I can now turn that into pictures. I go through the plant, or someone I assign it to will go through the plant with a tablet, take images of things that would be non-compliant. Say they find a hose that's uncapped. They would take a picture of that. It would automatically send an email alert to the department manager responsible. So then you can use that data and trend it per department, per month, per observation, or whatever category you would like to build into that.
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, heard a funny noise there. Ned is asking, how small a company could be till this would. And I will say that we've got customers that are $10 million companies, and we have Dole, who's, a $1 billion largest software company, or largest produce company.
Mm-hmm.
And Patty, are you there? I'm hearing some funny noises.
Hi, Barbara. Yes, I'm here. I'm not hearing anything.
Okay, I keep hearing a lot of beeps. Excuse me. And Johan is asking about setting up, using the module for setting up for HACCP plans. It's a fairly longer answer. I'm going to try to find a slide here to go to very quickly and see if I can go scrolling back to some of the ones that we didn't go to. Don't seem to do that. I'm going to send you some information about how you can define all of your CCPs or SOPs or GMPs, everything in the system, and then that goes into a task scheduler where tasks are set up, alerts go out, and then the results are analyzed in real time. But I can't seem to get back to that slide for some reason. I seem to be having some trouble there. But we do have a data sheet on how that works, and we'll make sure that you get that. And I think with that, we are a little bit over. If we didn't get to your questions, we've got a record of those. We'll make sure that we get to you after. Thanks, everybody, for all these questions. That was great. And Crista, as always, I just love hearing your insight. Always very educational. Thanks for joining us again. Thanks to our hosts at FoodSafetyTech. And we'll get everybody some data sheets with the follow-up information on some of the things that we couldn't get back to. So thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.